Hi, I'm Rebecca Balcárcel. Join me for Writers on Writing with Janet Wong.
Rebecca, I think
Sure.
you were going to ask me about techniques. Is that right?
Yes, I am.
Well,
Yes.
one thing that Sylvia and I did in
Ooh.
Hop to It is we put poetic forms and techniques in what we call, I think we called it the hidden language skills. I'm not quite sure. It's in the back matter of the book where different forms and techniques are listed with just a very quick explanation of what they are and where in the book you'll find them. So, for instance, let me see. Here it is. In Hop to It, we call it a mini glossary of poetic forms and techniques. And I'll read just the section of that book that pertains to this. All the poems in this book showcase poetic tools. In many cases, a single poem contains several features, but as a general rule, we have chosen to highlight just one or two elements per poem. We feel that discussing too many techniques for a single poem can overwhelm students and can kill your joy, right? When you start
Yes.
picking a poem apart, just a little too much, it's like, oh man, just let the poem live. But every once in a while, you'll see something going on in a poem, and you'll want to log that into your file cabinet in your brain, saying, this is really interesting. I like the way they did that. And one of my favorite techniques to use to create drafts that are different from each other is just alignment. How you break the lines, where you decide to break the lines. Are you going to have a long, skinny poem? Are you going to have a wide poem? Are you going to break the line in the middle of this phrase so that there's some ambiguity and you leave the readers guessing? Or do you want to be really straightforward and just say, this is the way it is, and this is how it could be, right? I used to like to create a lot of mystery by breaking the lines in a place where the reader was wondering, oh my, what's the next word going to be? And that mystery kept the reader going. And then I loved it when I was able to surprise them, like where they thought I was going to say cat and then I said dog, right? But but nowadays, I just like a poem to be really straightforward. I like it to be very clear in its meaning because I want to talk to you as a reader. I want you to understand what I'm thinking. I don't want to try to be smart and clever with you. I used to, but now that's not where I am. And you might find yourself at different places at different times in your life, at different times in your week, at different times in your day. Sometimes it's fun to be mysterious, and sometimes it's fun just to be really clear. But alignment is the way a poem is arranged with indentation and line breaks. Poets often play with alignment, especially when making revisions. Ding, ding, ding. A poet might decide to break a line right before or after a word to draw attention to it, or to place a word in a very short line to make it stand out. And then we list some poems with interesting alignment choices. And I
Mhm.
think that that's such an easy way to make a poem feel different that it's sometimes overlooked, but it's
Mhm.
super, super easy.
Thank you so much. I feel like alignment is really interesting, and it's fun even to take a professional poem and change how it lays on the page. Because I guess it puts you kind of inside the poem in a way that there's no other way to get deep into it structurally, like except to do something like that and see how you can even change the meaning by how it is arranged.
Yeah.
I love that.
And one thing that I find is that sometimes for a first draft, you want to just write it out like a paragraph. But then if you want people to say, oh, what an interesting poem, what an interesting poem, instead of, oh, that's a good paragraph, or that's an interesting essay, or what an interesting text. If you want them to use the word poem, then
Mhm.
you really do want lines of varying length. You really do
Yeah.
want perhaps stanza breaks where you group
Mm.
ideas into stanzas and have stanza breaks, just blank lines in between them. You don't
Yeah.
have to do it that way. There's this whole thing called prose poem, which basically
Right.
is like a paragraph. But generally speaking, if somebody asks you to write a poem, they want to see something that kind of looks, that has some white space on the page. So
Yeah.
just keep that in mind. And, there's a poem by Valerie Worth that's about a grandfather clock, and it's not a shape poem, but it evokes a grandfather clock because it's very long and narrow. There's a poem by Russell Hoban about the ocean called Old Man Ocean that is not a shape poem, but it evokes the feeling of the ocean with the long line and the shorter line, and the long line and the shorter line, the way the water will come in. So yeah, so you can think about just playing with it. There's no right way. It's whatever way you like, but just play with it a little bit.